it be awesome to be able to count on some recurring revenue for your nonprofit every month? How great would it be to be able to budget and plan your programming around funding you can count on? Recurring revenue can be a major asset to nonprofits, but not many nonprofits are fully tapping into its potential. In this video, I'm going to talk through 4 recurring revenue ideas and strategies, plus one bonus one. And I really hope that they help you think through how you can be able to build up some sustainable funding so you can do more good. Welcome back. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder, former executive director, and I make these videos on YouTube to help you create a social impact, whether that's through starting and growing a nonprofit or social enterprise or socially conscious business or any of the other dozens of ways you can change the world. You're definitely going to want to check out my newsletter, Changemaker Mondays. The link to subscribe is below. I send out tips every Monday, you can guess by the name, all about making an impact. That's helping you fundraise, it's helping you mobilize people in your community, it's helping you do all sorts of things. My goal here is to accelerate the social impact that you're capable of making, which I know is a lot. For each of the recurring revenue streams I'm going to talk about, I'm going to explain what it is. I'm going to give you a couple of steps on how you would get it started. And then I'm going to give you, based on some industry averages, an estimate of how much you'd be able to bring in each month with that type of recurring revenue. So let's go. The first type of recurring revenue I'm going to talk about here is monthly giving programs. And this is a pretty common sense one, but I think not enough nonprofits are really taking advantage of it. So monthly giving programs are what they sound like. You can encourage your donors, instead of making just a one-time donation, encourage them to make a monthly donation or some other cadence. And it's automated. So every month it can just take out the donation until they say, stop, I don't want to do that anymore. This creates a steady and predictable amount of revenue for your organization. So let's think through a real life example. One real life example is the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. They have a monthly giving program called Partners in Hope. And donors will give every month, varying amounts, whatever amount works for them, and they'll receive updates on the impact that their donations are making. They might even get access to exclusive content. So it's kind of almost like a subscription to a service, but careful not to frame it that way, because then you're talking about an exchange of goods, and that would potentially impact the donation's tax deductibility. We can talk about that later or in other videos. So setting up a monthly giving program is pretty simple. The first thing you need to do is create a mechanism for people to be able to give monthly. A lot of the donation software or donation forms that exist out there allow for this. You just need to say, be able to accept monthly recurring gifts here and give people that option right on the form. The second thing you need to do is create a compelling campaign with messaging that explains the pros and benefits of joining the monthly giving program to donors. You can even explain how it will create the ability to be a sustainable source of revenue for your organization. I've seen other organizations do this before. If an organization's leader has the trust of its community and its stakeholders, then that leader really just needs to say, hey, look, we need to be able to predict some of the revenue coming in so that we can scale our impact. We would love for you to join as a monthly giver to help us achieve. A couple of challenges you want to look out for in running a monthly giving program include just donor fatigue, donors getting a little tired of giving all the time, or perhaps if you had a larger one-time campaign where you might expect some larger donations, you might see some donors saying, yeah, I already give monthly, so I don't need to donate to that. which is totally reasonable. So looking out for that and thinking of some ways that you can keep them engaged and excited about giving month over month. A couple of ways you might do that are, again, sharing the impacts of the donations that is occurring and offering some special recognition. Maybe you have a donor who's been giving a year or 2 years or 5 years. Give them some special recognition if they're willing to be called out publicly. Of course, you always have to check. But hey, this person's been a long-time donor for 5 years. Here's how amazing they are. We're so grateful. Thank you, Bob, or whatever their name is. Another strategy is to create a sense of community among monthly donors. Oftentimes people give to an organization because they want to feel like they're connected to something. So giving donors an opportunity, if they would like, to connect to each other, to connect to other volunteers in the organization, to connect to you further, could be more ways of keeping them engaged. So let's talk about that estimated revenue. What might you expect to generate from a monthly giving program? This is going to be based on a mailing list of about 1,000 subscribers for your organization. So this is not starting with zero. This is after you've done some work to build up your audience. So let's say 5 to 10% of your mailing list converts to donors, and the average gift is about $25. That conversion rate is potentially an industry standard. Then on the low end, you might see 50 donors convert to monthly givers, and on the high end, maybe 100 donors. So you're talking about $1,250 to about $2,500 per month with that size mailing list. And that could convert, if you're doing a really good job, to estimated revenue of the ballpark of $15,000 and $30,000 a year. The second type of recurring revenue we're going to talk about is membership or subscription-based programs. And this is kind of an offshoot of the monthly giving program. So just like the name suggests, and just like you might see in other types of industries, this is a program where someone subscribes with a dollar amount per month, perhaps, and is receiving something special, a special benefit like educational content or access to something, right? So one of the reasons I wanted to urge caution in how you approach this is because the word membership can mean something different than you expect in the world of nonprofits. Some nonprofits are membership organizations, which means that actually their members might have a vote. And that might not be what you're going for with this. So just be really careful in how you frame this. And on the other side, the subscription-based side, you want to be very careful that the services or products you're offering for that subscription are something that furthers your social mission, because otherwise you might be hit with what's called unrelated business income penalties. If the IRS thinks that your nonprofit is generating revenue from something that is totally different from its mission, then you might be asked to pay taxes on that. Anyway, let's talk about some examples of these subscription or membership-based programs that are doing it really well. One real-life example is the National Audubon Society. When you join as a subscriber, you might get their magazine, you might get access or discounts to special events. You might even get some discounts on birding resources. If you want to try out something like this, your first step is to just figure out what you're going to offer and how that brings genuine value to the subscriber. Why would they want that thing? How does it connect to their passions? In terms of structuring the subscription, you might do a tiered system where, there's different levels of giving and donation based on what they're getting. Let's talk about a couple challenges you might face with this type of recurring revenue. Just like with donor fatigue, you might see some turnover rate here. People just kind of get tired or bored of the benefits. So you're going to want to figure out ways to keep them engaged and keep them on their toes and keep it interesting. And again, the whole thing about making sure that what you're offering furthers the mission of your organization. In the example I gave of the Audubon Society, they're all about protection of birds and animals. And so by offering these additional educational resources, people are being educated on how to do that. So that's furthering their mission. Strategies to keep your subscribers Engaged could include, just like with the monthly giving programs, providing updates, behind the scenes information, impact reports, getting their feedback, asking them regularly, is there something different you'd like to be seeing in this program? How can we offer you what you're looking for? Let's talk about estimated revenue. Again, using the example of a mailing list of about 1,000 subscribers, we're looking at an industry conversion rate of 3 to 7%. And then let's say that the average monthly subscription is somewhere in the range of $10 to $50. So on the low end, you're looking at about $300 a month. And on the high end, you're looking at like $3,500 a month, or an annual revenue of somewhere in the ballpark of 3,000 to 40,000. So it can be a broad range. And of course, you always need to think about the amount of time you're putting into managing it and if that's a good ROI. The third type of potential recurring revenue we're going to talk about is fees for service, or fees for your programs, your program fees. Another phrase for this is earned income. I've talked about this in some other videos. And what this basically is when you're charging people for some of the services or programming that you offer as a nonprofit. This could be trainings or coaching or public speaking or special events. It could be any number of things. I've seen organizations do everything from offering a moving service to, even nonprofit theater ticket sales is an example of this. Let's talk about one real life example, and that's the American Red Cross. So the Red Cross charges some dollar amount to offer its CPR and other special trainings. And it's doing these trainings on a regular basis. So they have a rhythm down. They know, okay, we're going to do 5 to 10 trainings this month, and that's going to generate X amount of revenue per month that we can count on. Again, because the mission of the Red Cross is, disaster readiness, disaster relief, and all sorts of other things related to that, by offering trainings that further people's education on these topics, they are still in alignment with their mission and not doing unrelated business. And again, that unrelated business is what they might be taxed on if they were doing it. Your first step in exploring this potential recurring revenue stream is to assess your organization's mission and the skill sets of your team and figure out what services or programs might be monetized. Then you want to develop a plan on monetizing it and making sure that the people you're asking to pay for these services or programming are the same people who can afford them. A lot of nonprofits serve vulnerable populations who might not have the resources to pay for programs and services. The idea here is to generate revenue from the people who can afford to contribute so that it can supplement the costs to help those who cannot afford to contribute. One challenge to look out for with this strategy is you might see competition. If you are offering a program or a service that you're charging money for, there could be other nonprofits out there. There could be even for-profit businesses doing something similar. So just something to be aware of when you're doing your market research to develop your strategy, if this is the route you go. And when you're developing your strategy to launch this successfully and avoid some of that competition, you really want to hone in on how working with your organization benefits the community and your organization's unique value proposition and skill sets. Let's talk about some estimated revenue. And I'm going to say this one's going to widely vary because in theory, you could have you could have a whole system kind of separated from your organization that focuses on your program fees. And it could be bringing in more than the number I'm about to tell you. But I'm just talking about an average conversion rate for 1,000 people on your mailing list. You have 1,000 people on your mailing list. Let's say 2 to 5% of that mailing list is actually the target audience for this specific service. So then maybe it's $100 to $500 per service that you offer. So on the low end, if 2% of your mailing list converts, you're talking about 20 clients paying $100 each. That's like $2,000. And on the high end, 5% of your 1,000 subscribers convert. That is 50 clients and they're paying $500. And then you're talking like $25,000. So again, it's a really broad range, but potentially this could be bringing in, several $1,000s, $20,000 to $25,000, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how much time and dedication you're putting into building it up. The fourth recurring revenue stream I'm going to talk to you about today is actually recurring, easy to run fundraising events. Now, normally I don't recommend big events that are doing fundraising because they can take a lot of time to put on. But in this particular situation, we're talking about manageably sized events that the organization has learned how to run so efficiently that it's super easy to execute on these events. These could be simple events. They could be networking dinners. They could be webinars. They could be, monthly gatherings. It could be any sorts of things. They don't have to be giant galas. Let's talk about a real life example. The Alzheimer's Association is one of these that does these kinds of events. They have a walk to end Alzheimer's and they host it regularly. So they know that they have formula to put on a successful event. They know all the pieces that go into it. They figured out the amount of fundraising they're going to be able to do for each event. And they've got their people in place. And they're nationwide, so they have a bit of scale and they have mechanisms for participants to jump in and help raise money too. If this is something you're interested in, the first step to implement it is simply to decide what kind of event format is going to be really, really manageable and streamlined for your organization, especially at its current capacity. If you are a small shop, you are probably talking about small events like the networking gathering idea I talked about before. You just need a venue and like 30 to 50 people and ask for a donation of $5 to $10 at the door. And boom, you have a extremely manageable, low touch fundraising event. In terms of the challenge you can expect, you got to remember if you're asking the same people on your mailing list to attend an event every month, they're not always going to, and some of them might get tired of those events too. So this is really a strategy if you think that the events you're going to offer are going to be very appealing to those on your mailing list for an extended period of time, and or you have strategies to build your mailing list over time as well, which hopefully you're doing regardless of what events you put on. A couple of strategies is you could mix up the event themes. Let's say you do this networking gathering, but every month it's a different theme. That could keep it fresh. You could offer incentives for attendance, like, a raffle if your region allows raffles to be done. Exclusive content you can only catch at this event. Maybe one time it's a costume affair. Who knows? All right, so let's make some revenue assumptions. And again, these are just assumptions and they're based on your mailing list of at least 1,000 subscribers. If you've got 5 to 15% of your mailing list attending events on a semi-regular basis, and let's say the average donation or event ticket is $20 to $50, then you're talking maybe like 50 attendees coming per month on the low end. That could be thousands of dollars, like, right, 12,000. Yes, up to several $1,000s. But again, in my opinion, you're probably not going to see, a $90,000 to $100,000 return on these at this small of a mailing list. And if you're not doing something really fresh every single month, because that would be a lot of people coming to your events all the time. All right, I promised a bonus recurring revenue strategy. So here it is. It is investment income. I would consider this an advanced strategy for the main reason that you have to have some money in order to invest it. How you do this as a nonprofit is you could start an endowment, which is, think of it as like a high yield savings account for nonprofits. It generates interest. You can also, just like anyone else, invest in income generating assets. So you as a nonprofit can totally participate in that. A lot of private foundations do this. They might establish an endowment and then give away, the interest generated to other charities. But you can also do that as a nonprofit that's not a private foundation. A real life example is the Ford Foundation. All right, so a couple of steps if you are interested in implementing this strategy. The first thing is you've got to develop an investment policy for your organization. So you and your board would get together and you determine what are your nonprofit's investment goals? How much money are you going to be putting in and when? What are the situations that might impact your ability to put the money into the investment account? Is there a situation in which you would withdraw money from the investment account? So all these sorts of rules need to be written out in some kind of investment policy. And I recommend getting the advice and help from a financial professional for this, if possible, because you'll have someone with those skills already on board. They might be able to help you think through that. And again, this is an advanced recurring revenue strategy because you would need a significant amount of money to put in an endowment or to invest in order to generate enough interest for it to be helpful to your operations. Challenges, if you have invested the money, you could lose the money, that just like anyone else. So that is a challenge to look out for. You might put some parameters about that into your investment policy as well. It's also a long game strategy. So you're probably not going to be generating very large amounts of money right off the bat if you don't have a lot that you're already putting in. Couple of strategies here, just like anyone else doing investing, you might want to diversify your investments to mitigate the risk that you'd be taking. Also, you're a nonprofit, so you might want to be investing in socially responsible companies or assets too. Let's talk about some estimated revenue. I'm assuming a very small endowment or investment strategy, like $50,000 to $100,000. In a typical endowment, I would expect to see multiple millions of dollars to generate a meaningful amount of interest. So at the rate that I talked about, a low end 50,000 with return of 4 to 7%, you're talking just a couple $1,000s a year, like 2,000 to 7,000 on the high end if you've invested $100,000. Just one final thought / disclaimer here. The numbers and some of the estimates I provided are based on doing one of these recurring revenue strategies. But keep in mind, let's say you were to try a handful of these or even all of them at the same time, you would expect to see a lower conversion rate because you're continuing to tap the same audience over and over again for different things, and people just get fatigued. So if you're going to do that, then growing your audience is going to be a really key strategy to making it work. I'd love to hear from you. Are you already incorporating some of these recurring revenue strategies into your nonprofit fundraising? Share in the comments what's working, what's not working, what are some of your challenges. The Changemaker community here can help figure it out with you. And if you're looking for tips and strategies and ways to accelerate the work that you're doing, don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, Changemaker Mondays. And of course, check out the other videos on my channel. I have over 200 all about starting a nonprofit, fundraising, getting community support, all of that good stuff. Last thought, if you're on Facebook, check out my Facebook group, Change the World or Bust. We've got thousands of people in it from around the world, and we'd love to see you join us there. Once again, I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I'll see you next time.